Hi, I'm Jerry and I work for Newmarket and District Youth for Christ, and I'm here to do your assembly. Whenever we come in, we'll always look at things from a Christian perspective. We're not here to make you Christians, but to give you an opportunity to meet people that hold a Christian faith, begin to understand what Christians believe, why they believe it, and how it impacts life in the year 2020. This week we're looking at the word empowered and how that links with the festival of Pentecost. When I put the word empowered into a thesaurus, these are the words it came up with: to authorise, enable, inspire, energise, invest, embolden, sanction and encourage. All words that motivate us, all words that encourage us to live life to the full. The festival of Pentecost is probably the least well known after Christmas and Easter. Easter, obviously, we celebrated a few weeks ago. In the Greek, the word Pentecost means 50th, as it is celebrated 50 days after Easter. This year, Pentecost Sunday is the 23rd of May. After Jesus had risen from the dead, he was seen by many of his disciples and followers over a period of about 40 days, before being taken up to heaven. The book of Acts tells us about some of these encounters. In Acts 1 verse 4 and 5 it says this: He, Jesus, while being together with them and eating with them, he commanded them not to leave Jerusalem, but to wait for what the Father had promised, of which he said, You have heard me speak. For John baptized with water, but you will be baptized and empowered and united with the Holy Spirit not long from now. In verse 8 in Acts 1, he goes on to say to them, But you will receive power and ability when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses both in Jerusalem and in all Judea, Samaria, and even to the ends of the earth. Acts chapter 2 tells us about the day of Pentecost. The day of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit arrives as a violent wind, so much so that people around it come out of their houses. The Holy Spirit falls on those gathered in the upper room, those followers of Jesus, and he appears like tongues of fire and rests on all of them. And he gives them the ability to speak in unknown languages to them. In fact, the people not only come out of their houses, but they hear what the disciples are saying. And the disciples move out and they say, the crowd says amongst themselves, being people from different places and speaking different languages themselves. Jerusalem was a very multicultural city, particularly just after the events of Easter. And the people who have gathered say to themselves, how can we hear these people speaking in our own languages? And in Acts 2, it tells you lots of different places where they came from. And they say, how can we hear them speaking in our own language when they're Galileans? And these Galileans normally don't know our languages. Peter, who remember only weeks before denied knowing Jesus and ends up being scared. In fact, all the disciples run off, leave him and are scared. Peter quietens the crowd down and begins to speak to them. He enlightens them or tells them about what had happened only a few weeks earlier. Many of those in the crowd may well have been at the events of the trial or even at the execution, or at least heard about it. But Peter, this person who only weeks before was fearful and cowering, his fearfulness becomes emboldenedness to speak out. His cowering becomes courageous. And in fact, of the 11 original disciples, Judas no longer being around, 10 of them were martyred or murdered for their faith. In fact, only John dies of old age, so we're told. So what did the Holy Spirit bring? We're going to look at two sections from the New Testament that explain some of what the Holy Spirit brought. The first one we find in 1 Corinthians 12 verses 7 and 8. And it says this: Spiritual gifts are given to each of us so that we can help each other. Now there's 9 gifts listed. People don't get all 9 gifts, but they get one or more. And here they are: a word of wisdom, a word of knowledge, faith beyond natural faith, gifts of healing, working of miracles, prophecy, discerning of spirits, speaking in unknown languages, and interpreting those unknown languages. We're also told in Galatians of 9 fruits of the Spirit. These are qualities that God enhances in our lives. So each human being has these qualities. But what I've found over my 40 plus years of being a Christian is that God enhances these qualities in the Christian believer. So we see that these fruit of the Spirit are as follows: love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Galatians 5 goes on to tell us, against all these fruit of the Spirit, there is no law against these things. And in fact, as I look at it as a Christian, they're qualities in my life that God has caused to grow from what they were when I became a Christian to what they are now. Am I perfect? No. Do I need growth? Yes. But the Holy Spirit develops those qualities within us. I'm going to show you a clip from a film called Chariots of Fire. I hope you enjoy it. We'll explore it after you've seen it.
I've decided. I'm going back to China. The missionary service have accepted me.
Oh, I'm so pleased.
But I've got a lot of running to do first. Jenny, you've got to understand. I believe that God made me for a purpose. For China. But He also made me fast. And when I run, I feel His pleasure. To give it up would be to hold Him in contempt. You were right. It's not just fun. To win is to honour Him. Jenny.
The final 400 meters. Taylor, États-Unis. Numéro 278.
Good luck. Don't expect I'll see you till after the race.
After 300 meters, rigor mortis sets in. You'll pull him in on a rope.
Johnson, Canada. Number 400.
Good luck, Taylor. Watch out for Little.
Coach says no problem.
He's got something to prove, something personal. Something guys like Coach will never understand in a million years.
Jenny.
Says in the old book, he that honors me, I will honor. Good luck, Jackson Shows. So where does the power come from to see the race to its end? From within. Jenny, I believe God made me for a purpose. But He also made me fast. And when I run, I feel His pleasure.
hope you enjoyed the clip. The film is about the 1924 Summer Olympics in Paris. The main characters are Harold Abrahams and Eric Liddell. Abrahams actually wins the 100 metres dash, but the clip that I showed you focuses more on Eric Liddell, who was a Christian. Eric refused to run in the heats of his favoured 100 metres because they were held on a Sunday. It made the newspapers back then in 1924. Instead, he competed in the 400 metres held on a weekday, and in this race he gained the gold medal. As you heard in the clip, whilst Eric felt or believed that God had empowered him to run fast, he also believed he'd empowered him or encouraged him to become a missionary in China. And whilst he won the gold medal in 1924, in 1925 it saw him travelling to China, working as a missionary, teaching Chinese children and then helping the poor. In 1943 he was interned by the Japanese into a camp. And actually he died there in 1945, 5 months before liberation. I have 2 quotes from people who knew Eric in the camp and how much an impact he had. One person, a guy called Norman Cliff, wrote this: "The finest Christian gentleman it has been my pleasure to meet. In all the time in the camp, I never heard him say a bad word about anybody." And Stephen Metcalf, another survivor of the camp, said this: "He gave me 2 things. One was his worn out running shoes, but the best thing he gave me was his baton of forgiveness. He taught me to love my enemies, the Japanese, and to pray for them." In 2002, a poll was done by the BBC, and in Scotland it voted Eric Liddell as the most popular Scottish sporting figure of all time. So, as he says in the film, where does the power come from to see the race to the end? From within. A quote from Eric himself about his 400 metre running that secured him the gold medal in 1924. This is what he said when asked: "The secret of my success over 400 metres is that I run the first 200 metres as fast as I can. Then for the second 200 metres, with God's help, I run faster." And that emulates Eric's life. He believed that God empowered him and gave him qualities to be the best he could, but when his qualities ran out, he believed on the Holy Spirit to empower him for what was lacking. I suppose if we come up to today's date, how does the Holy Spirit empower me, and what makes and has motivated me and allows me to see these qualities that we looked at in my life, living in the year 2021 or before that? And only recently I've seen myself with self-control, one of the fruits of the Spirit, 2 situations that my self-control has grown to a point where I didn't react as I would have reacted in 2 specific situations. And had I reacted like I would have been perhaps 5 years ago, it would have been really difficult, and the repercussions for me and for those involved would have been far, far worse.